So introduction to user experience design. So this is the outline of today's class, introduction and what user experience is about, the processes, UX in the real world. Then we'll do a quick recap and then we'll just flow from there. So what is user experience design? This is a very interesting picture here that shows a pathway. So what was actually designed here is this pathway that you would expect users to follow. As you can see from this image, this is where this man here is walking along. This gives an overview of user experience. Yeah. So users, this two pathway here provides two different experiences for users. If I'm the one walking along this path myself, yeah, this path here looks very convenient for me to follow in this situation because it's shorter. This path here, you have to take a more longer route to get to where you're going if your goal is to get to the left part of the road. Yeah, but look at it in another sense. If this path here is muddy or it's raining and you don't want to get yourself dirty, I feel users will conveniently take this path. So what I'm trying to get from this picture is that users have different experience in interacting with a particular product. But in this case, the product in this in quote is the road to get to this destination here. So under this condition, this path provides a better user experience for people to follow. But in a different scenario, users would prefer taking this path to get to their to the same destination. I don't know if that is clear, but I'll just proceed. You can always ask our questions after the class. So design now, let's go back to the basics. Design. What is design? Design is a process, a method, a toolkit to design experiences for various people. Okay. So design is a tool, method, process used to design experiences for various people, users, as the case may be. So as you can see, design is just the method, it's what you use to design, and the UX is the desired outcome. So now you design something. The goal of the design, of every design, is to give users or people that use your products a better user experience. So let's say now you want to design a table. Yeah, as an example, the goal of you designing that table is to give users a desired outcome. One, the table will help you to be able to place things on top. It should and should be very, very strong and steady, so it doesn't easily break. So these are those basic outcomes from a carpenter designing a table. Another example is for, let's say you want to design a book. The desired outcome for the book is for people to easily write on it. Yeah, so the book must be must have a good feel and texture. People should be able to easily write clearly on it without any form of inconvenience. So there are just little bits like this, but for every design which you want to do, there should be an outcome, a goal of a purpose for you making that design. And it's not limited to just digital products. Any product you're working on should have a goal. So UX design is about solving problems through empathy. So empathy here in this case means putting yourself in a user's position. So you should be able to solve problems by putting yourself in a user's position. So design is also, UX design is also about committing to building a product. Yeah, but your commitment to building a product is to ensure that yes, the user of your product, which is your customers, should be in mind. It's very paramount to have like a good thought process of how you would want this product to be very useful to people who you're designing it for. So now UX nowadays, when people think of UX design, like most UI designer or UX designers, yeah, they try to skip some basic processes that are involved in UX design process. So as you can see now, UX process involves loads of things, but most people, they just basically focus on these three key because these are the fun things people like to do when they design. Just rush to design the user interface of in this case, it can be a website or a mobile app or anything. They just go to the final or to the user interface design, the visual design itself, without following other due processes. Yeah, and that is not how to design. So the UX actually involves loads of processes, as you can see them here. It involves user interface design. It involves you doing lots of user research. It involves interaction design, graphic design, and visual design, and so much more. Um, so let's just continue. So great products are useful. So how do you know if a product is great? It should be useful, it should be usable, and it should be beautiful. So now this is another key thing here. When you're building a product here, the first thing you should have in mind is to ensure that yes, this thing you're building is useful. Yeah, so you cannot build a product by looking at it from the top of this triangle to the bottom. No, your product is going to suck. People would not want to use or interact with your product. So the best approach is to start from thinking, how will this product be useful? Yeah. Then you cannot go to, okay, if it's going to be useful for people, then you cannot, in subsequent iterations, try to make this your product more beautiful. But the first thing is to ensure that yes, this product you're about to build is going to be useful and it's going to be usable by people, which are your customers or your users. As I said, if you need to make it useful, usable, and then beautiful. You focus on the beautiful first. Your product at the end of the day would not be usable by people and it will obviously not be useful. So this is not the right approach. It's from bottom up. Ensure that yes, this product is useful. People would see the value of having this your product. Then you also need to ensure that yes, it's usable. People should have a good experience with interacting with your product. Then the last thing is to ensure that yes, this your product looks beautiful, looks good. Now this is the basic user experience processes. This is a very short version, so I skip lots of other interesting things, but this is very sufficient. So the first thing in the UX process, UX again, remember it means user experience. So you first need to start with what problem are you trying to solve? That's the first question you need to ask yourself. Who are you trying to solve it for? Then you can start ideating. Ideating in this case means thinking and exploring various ideas for how you want your product should look like. Then you can write a story showing how you want to solve this problem. Then you can start designing a flow. Then you can create prototype. Then you test the prototype. Then you can always go back to rinse and repeat until you ensure that yes, you have the optimal solution for that particular product. So this is the basic UX process which we are going to follow in subsequent videos and designs which we are going to do. This is our process. So something to keep in mind. So when designing any products or when you want to start any UX process, you should always keep in mind that your user are at the center of your thought process. That the ones the product is for, your users are going to use them, not you. So it should be at the core focus of every UX process. And you should the UX design itself does not require any requires processes and not tools. Yeah. So you can actually use tools to when working on the UX process, but it's not the core of it. Tools just makes your work more easier, more convenient to help you with these processes. But the core thing here is the process, ensuring that yes, you follow the right steps, do the right things to ensure that yes, your product has a good user experience at the end of the day, with you keeping your users as the core of the whole UX phase. And also, you should process is not a one size fits all. So every product has its own should have its own UX process. No UX process should be the same. They can be similar, but they should not be the same. Let's say I'm designing a website. Yeah, the UX process I'm going to take for me to achieve a very useful and good looking website should not be the same process that I take when I want to design a mobile application for a particular purpose. So you may have a similar process or workflow process, but they should not be the same. The people you interact with, the research you make, the whole process should not be the same, but should have like a very similar process. So now these are the basic UX processes here. So the first one is you empathize with users, then you can define the problem of what you are trying to solve. Then you can now start making iteration. Yeah, you think about the problem, think of ways of solving it. Then you can now start working on a prototype, like a sample of how you envision your product to look like. Then before you now start making tests. If you observe, test is very paramount in every UX process because before you launch or before you release your product to the public or to your users, it must have gone through series of tests to ensure that yes, okay, with the testing which are going to do, you're going to ensure that yes, you've seen all the problems that users could encounter, yeah, before you release your product. So you can actually solve these problems before your product is being launched for the general public or users to use. The testing phase will help you to figure out these problems and make solutions, optimal solutions for them before your product is being released. Let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about empathize. So empathizing, I said, is just it involves putting yourself in the user's position. So you ask yourself these key questions: Who are your users and what do they need? This is the first question. So um, before you start your UX process, empathizing is the first phase of the process, and you need to ask yourself these key questions: Who are your users and what do they need? Yeah. When you ask and you give yourself list of possible answers to this question to help streamline your thought process. Then the second question you can ask yourself is, what purpose does this product serve to your users? What is the purpose of designing this thing? What problem will it solve for them? This is the second question you need to ask yourself. Then you need to ask yourself, what are your business goals when creating this product? Like, what do you hope to achieve in the long term? What is the goal of? Because you're designing for your users, but you too you are designing for. Um, you should also put yourself in mind. What is the goal of you building this product? This is another question you need to ask yourself. Yeah, and what currently exists to serve the same purpose. So now, when designing a product, obviously you should ask yourself, this thing I'm trying to create a solution for. Are there any similar solutions in mind that are already um, out there? Rather, and you look at, okay, I want to design a beverage or a soda drink. Let's say I want to be the Pepsi brand. Then I look out there. Okay, are there any similar product? Are there any similar drinks out there that is a soda or people would like to that are people are drinking? So you look at your competitors or people or product that are having similar um that are having a similar goal to what you are trying to do. So you look at this product and try to refine it and say, okay, what are these people not doing right? What do I have to improve on from what these guys are doing? So these are questions you need to ask yourself, like putting yourself in the user's position. Then we have the gathering of data phase. So in the empathize phase, you do things like this, like you conduct interviews with users or potential users of your product with the goal of gathering enough data and information about these users, about potential users, because they're the ones to interact with your products. So the interviews will give you more detailed insights of potential users and how they think and so much more. Then you conduct surveys, you ask them questions, and you try to see how users would answer the questions. So surveys is a very, very important part of the UX design process because it helps you make more informed decision based on your users' answers, your potential users' answers. Then you do a review or an analytic data from existing products. As I mentioned earlier, you make a review of other similar products and then you analyze that later to see what and what you can improve on. Then you have your business goals and you know or you establish your technical limitations. These are questions you ask yourself when you're in the empathize phase. Then you synthesize this data. When you've gathered all this data from the interviews, from the research, from the questionnaires you sent out, gather this data and then you build what is called a persona. So persona is more or less like you creating an ideal user of your product. Talking about the persona contains some key informations like the user's name, age, goals, problems, and so much more. So it's more or less like you building your ideal user. So yeah, so you use the data from your research to build the persona, you build a business case for your product and feature, then you map out your competitions of that product which you are trying to build. Then the next phase is to define the problem. Define the problem involves things like creating an empathy map. This empathy map involves it has. I will show you what an empathy map looks like here. It has a 4 quadrants that refers to what the user says, thinks, does, and feel. So yeah, it's very important when you are in this research phase to try to put yourself in users from the data you've gathered. You try to answer these key questions. What does the user say? What do they think? What does users do? How do they feel? That's what this empathy map is about. You also design what is called a problem statement that talks about the problems that you are trying to solve. It's very, very key to know these are all the problems that this problem hopes to solve in the long term. Then you also ask yourself what is called how might we questions. These are questions that talks about let's say you ask yourself how might we do this, how might we do that. This would also help you to streamline your thought process during your research phase. So this is how an empathy map looks like. It has like a 4 quadrant. You write your possible answers in these 4 boxes here. Okay, then we have the ideate phase here. This is the third part of the UX design process. It involves lots of brainstorming and lots of collaboration. So here it involves you bringing as much people as possible in a room or together, and you brainstorm on possible solutions to the problem statements or the problems you have defined in the previous stage. So yeah, I can see your questions. I'm going to give you the material for the class after. So you explore different ideas together. In this ideation phase here, one very key thing which I have to say is that there are no bad ideas in this phase. You come up with as many ideas as possible. If possible, come up with as much as 50 to solve that particular problem. Then subsequently, you can now start breaking down these ideas into, okay, these are the important ones. These ones are the ones we are going to test when we're in the testing phase. You understand? So ideation phase, or the ideate phase, involves gathering as much ideas as possible with people. It can also involve your stakeholders, clients, users, as much people as possible. The goal here is to gather as much ideas as possible and ask enough questions. Then we have what is called an information architecture. So this is the content of an experience organized in a logical manner. So yeah, it's basically a hierarchy of how you envision the content or structure of your products should look like. And the last phase is called the prototype phase. Prototype phase involves drafting out like a sketch, a wireframe of how you envision your product should look like. So wireframe is more or less like a diagram. A diagram that try to define basic things like layout, hierarchy, and state of various elements of the product you're trying to build, be it a website, an application, as the case may be. But it's not just limited to digital product. Let's say you even want, as a carpenter, as an example again, you want to build a table or a chair. An ideal carpenter, not the ones in Nigeria, even the ones in Nigeria too, they'll most likely sketch out the design of how the chair or the table should look like on paper before they start actually building and constructing it. It's a similar process that should be done when doing your UX process. You have like a wireframe. I'll show you how wireframes look like. So yeah, this is very key to help you to have like a visual structure of what you want. You can always play out with it. You can always play with this wireframe, make mistakes, correct them, you understand, as much as possible. So this is an example of a wireframe here of a Facebook web interface. As you can see, this is just a very, very, very rough sketch of the design. It just shows you how the tab here looks like. You can see the home icon here, the refresh icon. To draft how you would envision your platform, device, website, or application should look like. Then the last phase is the test phase. So the test phase involves gathering real feedback. So as I said initially, when you have drafted your wireframe, you try to make it as refined as possible. Then you can actually do what we call a prototype, make the wireframe interactive, as if you want to do a digital version. Then you can give it to actual users to test and again give you feedback on how they interact with your product. As I said, it should start with a very simple low fidelity prototype. Then you give it to actual users or potential users of this product to test. Then when they've tested this product, they give you feedback which you would gather and then refine the design of prototype to make it much better, much user friendly for people to interact with. Then you give users again to test again until you have like an optimal solution. So that's the goal of this test phase, is to gather as much real feedback as possible to help you refine your product. So UX and reward. So who does UX? So we have different people that their job basically is to improve user experiences of various products. So there are UX researchers here to identify user behaviors, goals, and needs through interviews, studies, and survey. We also have UX designers or interaction designers to define interactions, user flows, wireframe, low and high fidelity designs. They also have the UI engineer. They build a system by interpreting functional specialization, sitemap, and wireframe. They will have the content strategist. They help with the planning, development, and management of content written on the platform or on other media. So content is also very, very key in the UX process. So when you build a product, like a digital product in this case, be it a website, an application, content on the website is another very key process of the user experience for users. What you have on your website, on your application helps with the user experience. So you need to really put lots of thought process or hire a content strategy or a content writer to help you give you the best copy or content to put on your device, on your product rather, so as to enable users to easily interact with it. The field of user experience design is rapidly evolving. We have lots of user experience designers in the world, especially in Nigeria. So it's a very, very key and important field in every tech space or every tech field. So we need to learn actively through books and classes. There are lots of user experience books out there that I can recommend for you guys to read. I need to drop it in the group chat. So it's going to help you to build your thought process on how the user experience process should be. And how do you get started? So one of the first things to learn the fundamentals. So in the next class, we're going to be more proactive. This is just like less like a lecture. The next class, I'm going to teach you the basic fundamentals of designing first. I'm going to talk about color, typography, and layout. I'm going to show you also how to sign up with the design tool which I'm going to use, which is Figma. I want to show you the basic interface of Figma and how to use it before we go into a more technical class. But the fundamentals is very, very important, which is color, typography, and layout. I'm going to talk about this, show you how to choose the right colors. Typography is another very important because it's very, very key. So if you look out there, if you look at any design, be it a flyer, banner, mobile app, website, consists of these key things. It must have very good colors that complement each other. Typography. In every design, I want to make a design beautifully. To me personally, I say it's fonts. If your choice of typography is very, very key. So you need to have a good fundamental of how to use these types. And then layout, as I mentioned earlier, in the wireframe phase of your UX process, where you have to structure various content of your products. Your layout is very, very similar to. So wireframe basically involves you putting various elements on various layouts on your product. So it's a very key fundamental which we need to talk on. So you need to train your design sense. Training your design sense involves you looking out for good designs. You can also use various inspirations out there, various platforms that can help you with inspiration like Dribble, Behance, even Figma too. Figma community. There are lots of design inspirations there for you to help train your design sense. So as you can see, this is Dribble here. It's a hotspot for designers where they go and get design inspirations. Then we have Behance here. Behance is also a very good hotspot for you to go and get inspiration to help train your design sense and see how other designers are doing it right. So it helps train your thought process. Then one of the key way for you to train yourself is to master the design tool. As I mentioned earlier in this course, we're going to be using Figma for doing the design, and we need to have a good master. But I feel mastery is not really the main thing here. The main thing is for you to understand the key principles of designs and how the UX process work. Mastery of the designs will always come after through constant practice. Then we have design exploration. You explore various design that is out there and practicing and making mistakes and then improving on yourself. And this is a recap of what we talked about today. Introduction, what exactly is user experience, and the processes involved. Then we spoke about UX in the real world and how to get started. So as I said, this is just the first phase of this class. That's going to give you an overview of what user experience is. Could have just easily skipped to the web design phase, but I feel it's key for us to know about user experience, because when designing a website, you should not just jump into the website design straight up. No, we need to actually, there's some key things which needs to be put in place before we go to doing the actual web design, and I feel this is the right approach we need to take. So let's just get to it. Let's be brave and let's just start strong. So this is the question time. If you have any questions, please let me know. Can always raise your hand and I will tell you when you can ask. And about someone saying something about this material. Yeah, so I'm going to drop it in a link to the material in the group chat, so you can always have it as a reference. So I hope that answers your question. Please, if you have a question, just raise your hand and then we can go on. So as I said earlier, in the next class, we're going to have a more interactive class. We're going to have like we'll do actual designs. We'll talk about the Figma interface design, how to sign up, and how to interact with the Figma workspace. We're actually going to create a website design on Figma, which we're actually going to build ourselves. So we're going to just do the wireframe, implement the wireframe, like design an actual design. Then we're going to implement this design on the web. So Dan has a question. Please go on. Hi, Dan. Hi, Dan. Please ask your question.
Thanks. Then UI design and same thing.
Dan, you're not so audible. And you can always type your question and I'll see it in the chat.
I said, what I mean is that is UX design and UI design the same thing, or they are different things?
They are not the same. Okay, that's a very good question. I thought I touched on that. So UI design basically talks about the user interface. UI means user interface. It basically talks about the visual element of your design, what users interact with, like the screen now, the buttons, the toggles, the icons. Let me see if I can show you an example. So this is the user interface here. So what do you interact with here? You interact with